Uh, before I share a video with everyone, I just wanted to thank Coach Siegel for being part of this. It's no doubt not only the message itself that you guys are about to hear, very, very special, but most of you guys here know how special he is to me and his family. You know, I really think that the person I am today and the coach I am today, a lot of it is because of his leadership and his mentorship. I'll probably be in Brazil right now, I don't know, selling something on the street if it wasn't for Coach Siegel. He's a mentor, a friend, somebody that I wanted standing right next to me when I got married. So he was my groomsman up there. So he means the world to me. And I'm just glad that he's excited about this call and just get the chance to share his story with you guys. So before I get him to speak a little bit, I wanted to share this really cool video with you guys, and then we can get the session started.
Marcelo, I don't hear anything.
Can you guys hear it?
No.
No volume.
No.
No, not at all.
Okay. Can anybody, you know, like so many kids, I mean, it's the first time I'm sharing something. I can hear it. Are you guys, can you guys?
Because you have your earbuds in.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I'm going to restart it. Let me know if you can hear it now.
In August of 2015,
Yes.
I was asked to send a video to
Yeah.
Okay.
a boy from
Yeah.
Lubbock, seriously injured in a golf cart accident. Little did I know that would lead to so much more.
To the home of our football champions.
And we watched the Saints and we watched the video of the Saints.
Hey, what do we say?
But I didn't watch those.
Say, who dat?
Who dat?
Was a great athlete, and one thing that we did every single day, we never missed a day of throwing the baseball or the football. That's what we did every day, and that's certainly something I miss so much. On July 28th, 2015, I received a phone call around 2 p.m. Luke had been in a golf cart accident. Luke had suffered head and chest trauma, and he'd been in cardiac arrest for 7 minutes. Come on, buddy. That's what we do for the Red Raiders.
Keep it going.
For Texas Tech. Good, Luke. To see the kind of fighter that inspires all of us players and coaches alike. He's got a warrior mentality. He's not giving up. He continues to inspire us, and whether it's by his presence at a practice or our spring game or around the complex.
What's up, buddy? How you doing? Hey, doing good? Nice here, buddy. I'm praying for you, buddy. Hope everything goes well. Good to see you. You too. Yes, sir.
I have the Siegel family and Luke mean everything to us. There's no comparison. Luke has done so much for me and our team, so much more.
The toughest person I know and I've ever met is Luke Siegel. This is his dad, Tim, right here.
He's the toughest guy I've ever known, period. Each day he defies all odds and proves that so-called experts wrong. He's just an inspiration to all of us.
Maybe the most special thing that ever happened to Luke was that Drew Brees threw a pass in the end zone to one of Luke's good friends and handed it to Luke.
Luke has inspired me in so many ways. Not only that, but his family and the way that the community has rallied around him. I think about you all the time, man. Dad keeps me up to date with everything you're doing. You can feel the love of a father for his son. You can feel the love of a family for their son. You can feel the love of a community for one of their own.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah, what's up, buddy? Yeah, what's up?
We're so blessed to have been touched by so many. Drew Brees is and will always be Luke's hero. Elvis Andrews is Luke's favorite baseball player.
How you doing, man? You doing good?
Patrick Mahomes, what he did for us this past season to have Team Luke hope for minds on his cleats and helped us raise a lot of money. I can go on and on and on, but those athletes mean so much to us, and we're so appreciative.
Hi, Luke. This is Andre Agassi, and I just want you to know that I am praying for you and your strength.
Hey, Luke, Jim Kelly here. Just want to let you know that I'm thinking about you. I'm praying for you.
Hey, Luke. Coach Kingsbury with the Arizona Cardinals. Just wanted to tell you we're all praying for you.
Hey, Luke, it's Roger here. I just wanted to let you know that you have to stay strong, and I'm behind you.
Luke, are you daddy's boy? Are you daddy's boy? There you go.
Each and every opportunity that I see those videos, it puts a smile on my face because it just lets me know the power of the human spirit and the power of a team and a support system around someone.
See those eyes? That's my boy.
Okay, Coach.
There he is. We got the 5-time NBA champ, Dennis Rodman, finally here with us. Dennis, thank you so much for being with us this morning. And we were waiting all morning to break down the docu-series with you.
You turn that off?
What's wrong, Stephen A?
Molly.
You know why? You know why I would, right?
Is that a damn Cowboys jersey you have on?
Oh, I thought something really happened.
There you go. Learning as we do this. Okay, Coach.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Marcelo and everyone that's here on the call. Marcelo was my associate head coach for 7 years, and I know everyone that has taken lessons or worked with Marcelo. I know all of you know that he's got a lot of energy. He's a great guy, a great coach, and I think all of you should feel very blessed that you are able to learn not just about tennis, but about life from Marcelo. And we had some great times. As you can imagine, we had a few Brazilians on our team. There was a lot of Portuguese being spoken, but at the same time, we had a lot of victories as well. And because of Marcelo, we had teams in the top 10, top 15 all of our years, including a team that made the finals of the NCAA. So it's an honor and a privilege. I have done a lot of this over the last few years, but this is the first time on the phone, and looking forward to sharing our stories. So thank all of you for being here. And I look forward to sharing not only our story, but a message that I believe that applies to everyone that's listening, whether your age is 8 all the way up to 80. I think some of the things I'm going to talk about, I would imagine, applies to you. At the very end of my talk today, I'll make sure that I bring Luke into the room so that all of you get to see Luke and get to see the fighter that he is. I was the head coach at Texas Tech from 1993 until 2015, and I had a great job. I love coaching because what I loved about coaching, I loved the chance to develop. I loved the opportunity to teach. I loved being around the players. And when I decided to retire or resign from Texas Tech, it wasn't because I had lost the love of coaching. The opposite actually was true, because I had left the best team I had ever had. That team that I left ended up winning the Big 12 and finishing the top 10 in the country. But I left for one reason, and that was to be around my family. I have 3 daughters and a son. And at the time, Luke was 9 years old, and Kate and Ellie were just a couple of years older. And I had made the decision to leave Texas Tech so that I could spend more time with my family. And I took a job that not many people go from college to high school and middle school, but that's what I did. I became the middle school and the high school coach just so that I could be around my 3 children. Kate loves volleyball and basketball, and Ellie volleyball, and Luke was an incredible athlete. And before I tell you the story, I wanted to give you a little bit of a background about Luke. He was a baseball player first and foremost. But what separated Luke from every other 9 and 8-year-old that played baseball, and even true for tennis players, is that all of you, I would imagine, prefer to play matches over practice. Luke loved to practice every bit as he loved to play. We would get out every single day and throw the baseball or the football every day. We'd work on ground balls over and over and over because he wanted to make sure he was the best that he could be, and ended up being really the best second baseman in Lubbock, Texas, because of his work ethic. And that's really the kind of person that he was at a young age. He was very organized. He cared about people. He wanted to help others. There are a lot of stories I can share, but the main thing is that Luke was someone that cared about pleasing others. And so that kind of gives you a little bit of a background, but he played all sports. Everybody loved being around Luke. And I can tell you there's one quote that I'll never forget from my mom. She said that Luke had a way of making others feel like Luke was their best friend. So everybody that Luke was in contact with, they felt that Luke was their best friend. So I retired from Texas Tech July 8th, 2015, so that I could spend more time with my family. On July 28th, 20 days later, I get a phone call. I'm on my high school tennis courts giving a lesson to a few kids. And I get a phone call from an individual, and he says to me, "Hey, Luke has been in an accident." And I really didn't believe him because he was sort of calm about it. He said, "Luke's been in an accident." And I said, "How bad is it?" He said, "I think he broke his nose." So I immediately left the courts, but I wasn't as concerned because I was told he just broke his nose. I drove fast, but maybe not fast enough. I remember as I was driving down Indiana Avenue, a calm came over me. I'm not sure why, but it made me relax a little bit. But as soon as I got to the scene of the accident, helicopter was hovering above, and the ambulance was just taking off. I got out of my car and ran towards the ambulance. A fireman stopped me and said, "Just go to the hospital." I said, "Is Luke okay?" He said, "Just get to the hospital." My wife called me and said, "I don't think it's very good." I said, "Look, I'll meet you at the hospital." I arrived just a couple of minutes after the ambulance and immediately went into a room where I saw across the hall was the emergency room. And there was a lot of chaos in that room. There were a lot of people scrambling around in Luke's room. And about 2 minutes later, an individual, a doctor, came up to me and my wife and said, "I need to speak to both of you." I knew at that time it wasn't very good news. He got us into a room and he said, "I want you to know that Luke suffered head and chest trauma. He suffered an anoxic brain injury, which means he lost oxygen. And Luke was in cardiac arrest for 7 minutes." Now, all I remember after that was that my hands were numb, my face was numb, and I'm not sure how many minutes later I woke up to a mask, an oxygen mask in my face, because obviously what I heard was far from what I was told maybe 30 minutes earlier. Luke broke his nose all right, but they're a lot worse. Luke suffered a traumatic brain injury from the fall. The golf cart that Luke was on tipped over and landed when Luke was driving and landed on top of Luke. 550 pounds landed on top of Luke. But then as he was in the ambulance, Luke's last words were, "I can't breathe." At that time, they intubated Luke to try to make sure that he had some air breathing, and then was in the hospital in the emergency room 7 minutes. Basically, Luke was gone for 7 minutes. For the next 8 days, we didn't know if Luke was brain dead. The doctors, for the next 48 hours, we had no idea if Luke was going to make it. The doctors kept telling us, "We don't know, we don't know." Day number 8 was a day I'll never forget. A doctor came into our hospital room, and he said to me, "Does Luke like music?" And I said, next to sports, music is his favorite thing in the world. He said, "Do you mind if I play the ukulele?" I said, "Sure." He began to play the ukulele, and at that time, we saw brain activity on the monitor. That was the first time in 8 days that we knew that Luke was not brain dead. And the day before that, Luke had 3 brain surgeries, and the doctor the night before said to me, "I don't know if Luke is brain dead. I know this, that we have no other options." And the very next day, we saw brain activity. So 44 days we spent in Lubbock at the hospital, 44 excruciating days. Luke had 8 surgeries while he was in the hospital. We were told basically that things didn't look good. We had a doctor ask us if we wanted to continue. I said, what do you mean continue? He said, I don't know what kind of life Luke is going to have. Do you want to continue? I said, absolutely. Of course I do. We were then airlifted to Fort Worth at Cook Children's Hospital, one of the best hospitals in the country. We arrived there on September 10th, 2015, 4 months after the accident. 5 days after we arrived, I was in a room with my wife, with about 8 others, therapists, counselors, nurses. They all gave us their hope, their game plan, what Luke was going to do while in therapy, while getting rehab. But the last person to speak was the neurologist. He opened up his laptop and he said, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Luke will never use his limbs. He'll never use his voice. He should never open his eyes. And he opened up and showed me a globally damaged brain, white, complete white. He said, this is as bad a brain as I've ever seen. He said, please understand that we'll do whatever we can, but there's a very good chance he will never, ever open his eyes, use his limbs, or use his voice. You can imagine out of a movie, everybody leaves the room. It's just my wife and me. I'm trying to console my wife while I can't believe what I heard. Over the next few months, Luke did rehab, Luke did therapy, but really not much of it because of his high blood pressure, his high brain pressure. His heart rate was constantly high. We didn't do much. Luke threw up almost every single day. Just before the Thanksgiving, the doctor came up to me and said, listen, Luke's not making enough progress. We need to send Luke home. I said, can you at least give us another week to see if he makes progress? The very next week on a Friday, just before Thanksgiving, Luke made a sound, the first sound he made since July 28, 2015. The amazing thing then is we had nurses and doctors run to Luke's room in the 4th floor. They couldn't believe what they heard. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough. They told us that in January, it was time to go home. That although Luke wasn't making enough progress, he would make more progress at home. So on January 6, 2016, 5 months after the accident, we came home to Lubbock. Now, Luke has 3 sisters. Luke has family. Luke has plenty of friends. It took a lot of getting used to. And we were doing therapy from January of 2016 to August of 2016. Every day, 3 hours a day. Some days we would try, but most of the time, very little success. It seemed that Luke was doing okay. It also seemed that Luke's sisters, Luke's mom was doing okay. But there was one person who really wasn't doing very okay, and that was me. I was still coming to terms with the fact that my son, my athlete, my hero, was never going to be the same. And the issue was, not only was never going to be the same, but what was going to happen next? The unknown every single day was getting to me. And for the next 6 or 7 months, I shut the world out. I didn't want to be around anyone. I couldn't deal with the fact that this had happened to us. I had a tremendous amount of anger, and I hope and pray that those of you that are listening today don't carry anger with you. Luke was on a golf cart at a friend's house with no adult supervision, and I didn't know that this family owned the golf cart. And I live with that every day. And anger sometimes overwhelms me. But I also know that trying to let go of my anger not only will help me, but will help Luke and the rest of my family. In August of 2016, basically 13 months after the accident, I was asked to speak at my children's school. Now, I had not been anywhere in Lubbock, Texas. I had not even been on the Texas Tech campus since the accident, because that was life before the accident. I could not drive anywhere near the Texas Tech campus. But in August of 2016, I was asked to speak at my kids' school, middle school. There were about 300 or 400 kids that showed up at FCA that morning. And I decided the night before, I wanted to make this talk more than talking about Luke, but I wanted to share something that they, the audience, could keep with them forever. And those of you that are listening today will receive a handout with the 5 things that I will talk about. Because what on that handout, every one of you will receive this. It will give you the opportunity to follow Luke and his story and his video on Instagram or on Twitter or on Facebook. It will also, I hope, give you the opportunity to leave this handout by your bed or in school or in your bathroom, somewhere where every single day you can look at this handout and maybe Luke will change your frame of mind for that particular day. I wrote 5 things, and these 5 things I call 5 inspirations from Luke. Number 1 is to find your passion. Now, Marcelo knows this. A lot of people that know me, including Patricia, know that I was very, very, very passionate. I was passionate about life, about my faith, about sports, about Texas Tech, about our New Orleans Saints. I was very passionate about my tennis team at Texas Tech. So much passion. But my passion went away. I lost a lot of passion to live. I didn't feel like I could live anymore. Certainly not the way I used to live. And one day, a year and a half after the accident, this woman came up to me and said, listen, you are struggling so badly. I think you need to consider starting a foundation. And I said, a foundation? I don't know the first thing about a foundation. Secondly, I don't have the energy. I'm spending every hour with Luke. I don't have the energy. But what I learned is that in January 2017, not very much longer after the accident, January of 2017, a year and a half after the accident, I started the Team Luke Foundation. Now, I had no idea what I was doing. I know what I wanted to do eventually, but I wasn't sure what to do. So I started with meetings, and I started with ideas, and all I know is I wanted to help others. And ironically enough, I got a phone call in June, 6 months after. And this woman on the other side, on the other line, said to me, listen, my name is Rhonda Johnson. I have a foundation called Hope for Minds. I said, really? What do you do? And she says, I help children after brain injuries. I said, my goodness, I do the same thing. I got in my car and I drove 6 hours to Austin. I met with her for 3 hours. And after 30 minutes, I realized that we need to merge. And in January of 2018, 6 months later, we formed the nonprofit called Team Luke Hope for Minds. And what we do is we support children after brain injury. And over the last 2 years, we have given out over $500,000 to families in 23 different states. Children who have suffered a brain injury from a golf cart accident like Luke's, ATV accidents, car accidents, near fatal drownings, accidents at home. We have seen it all. I was on the phone 2 days ago with a mom whose 1-year-old daughter suffered a near fatal brain injury from the flu. I had someone I talked to last week in our support group whose son fell into the pool, was in the pool for 20 minutes. Every single week, I'm trying to give hope to other families while trying to remind myself. And that word hope is a word I hope that you take away from today. Because I used to hope that the Saints would win or the Texas Tech would win. I used to hope a lot of things. But now I hope and I pray that Luke gets better. And I hope and pray that I'm able to help others. So what I'm asking all of you today is to find your passion. Don't let anyone tell you you cannot be successful in something. But I can tell you, though, that when I was coaching at Texas Tech, I wanted tennis players who are passionate, not just about tennis, but passionate about something else, about family, about their teammates, about soccer, whatever it was. I wanted them to be passionate. And what I'm now doing is I'm regaining my passion because I'm helping others. And I think all of you will understand that when you help others, it helps you feel better. That's number 1, find your passion. Number 2 is don't ever quit. Well, that applies to all of us every day, doesn't it? I wake up next to Luke on that bed that's right behind me 4 nights a week. We have a night nurse 3 nights. But 4 nights a week, I wake up next to Luke every 3 hours to turn Luke, because Luke can't turn on his own. We want to make sure that we keep him away from bed sores. Sometimes I notice that Luke's arms are cold or that his leg is sticking out. And I think to myself, how long was he cold? I also wonder, is he thirsty? And I swab his mouth. And what ends up happening when I do that I'm wide awake for the rest of the night. For 2 years after the accident, I did not sleep a full night. And even today, I rarely sleep a full night when I'm with Luke, because sometimes I find myself just looking at Luke and just focusing on what Luke is doing and what I hope that he can do. But I will never quit, because I know that Luke never quits. And you tennis players that are listening, when you suffer from what you would call adversity, when you're down a set in a break and you think, oh my gosh, I'm not getting better, the world is crashing. It's not. Because hopefully today, Luke will change the way you view adversity. Luke will change the way you view hardship, the way you view struggles. Because I know this, that I will never quit, because Luke never quits. And I hope that when Marcelo hands out the Team Luke bracelets to each of you, that bracelet will make you think about Luke, but it will also make you think about those that need prayer. And it will also remind you that you have it much better than Luke. So therefore, don't take things for granted. So therefore, don't feel sorry for yourself. Instead, find the strength that hopefully Luke has given you. That's number 2. Don't ever quit. The third one, and this is very important. Number 1, don't ever, find your passion. Number 2, don't ever quit. Pay attention to number 3. Number 3 is to lean on friends, family, coaches, teachers, siblings, parents. You see, I bring that up because I leaned on no one for a long time. The phone would ring, the doorbell would ring, I wouldn't answer it. And I love to be around people. And for a long time, I couldn't. I couldn't do it. Lean on friends because I didn't. And what was happening is that I was shutting the world out, and I was making it more difficult for me to be better as a father to Luke. And now what I realize is that I need people in my life. Every single day that I'm outside in Lubbock, Texas, and I mean every single day, I'm walking around with Luke in the neighborhood, or I may be walking at a grocery store, and someone comes up to me and says, you've changed the way I parent because of your relationship with Luke. Or when I look at the Facebook posts and I see how tough Luke is, it inspires me to want to do more. My children pray now, and they never did before Luke's accident. I'm a better parent. I'm a better person because of what Luke is going through. And that word I just mentioned, I mentioned the word hope earlier. The second word I want to focus on is inspire. Luke has inspired a lot of people. I don't even realize how much he's inspired. I know we have a lot of people follow us on social media, well over 50,000 people. And when I post something on Facebook or post something on Instagram, I do it because I want people to see what they have. But I also want them to see and pray for a little boy that's strong, that was told he would never use his limbs, use his voice, or open his eyes. And guess what? He's doing all 3. He's doing all 3 because of the fighter that he is, because of the athlete that he was, and the work ethic that he had then and that he still has today. Lean on friends, lean on people. Don't keep things inside. The second part of that is when you notice a friend, a teammate, a peer, a sibling is having a hard time, reach out. Sometimes a simple, hey, how are you, goes a long way. When I get a text message from someone who says, thinking about you, how is Luke today? That makes me feel pretty good. When I have my head down in the grocery store because I don't want to be noticed, because I can sense that people know who I am and they're talking. But when someone comes up to me and says, you're not going to believe this, I just prayed that one day I would meet you, and here you are. It gives me comfort. And so remember, lean on friends, and also when you notice people need your help, reach out to them. The fourth one, very important, be careful, make good choices. Now, I would imagine most parents on the call right now have told their children, make good choices. Every day I do that. My daughter, Ellie, went outside a little while ago to take a walk with a friend. And I said, be careful, make good choices. That's ingrained in my head. Well, I always told Luke to make good choices, but I had no idea that the family that Luke was with didn't tell their child, make good choices. And Luke was told by us to always be careful. Well, this little 9-year-old boy had a golf cart that was souped up, modified, heavier, taller, faster. And I can imagine that a lot of you in this room or this call either know someone who has a golf cart or been on one. This is a souped up, heavier, taller, faster golf cart. This family allowed 2 9-year-olds on the city street with no adult supervision. The little boy was told, don't ever let anyone drive the golf cart. For some reason, on that particular day, he allowed Luke to drive it. And the reason he allowed Luke is because Luke is the most careful friend that he had. Unfortunately, Luke made a turn and it tipped over. Make good choices, be careful. And that applies to when Marcelo and I were coaching at Texas Tech. I would remind our players on an airplane all the time, be smart, make good choices. You have no idea who might be sitting next to you, who can hear you, that you're representing Texas Tech at all times. So those of you on the UTA Academy, when you're out there practicing, you're representing an academy. You're representing your parents. You're representing Marcelo. And you want to have that reputation that everyone at the academy works hard every single day, that you don't make excuses, that you give your all every single day, that you don't take things for granted, and that you don't make excuses. You see, I made some excuses after Luke's accident, and I realized I'm not above making excuses. Sure, I'm dealing with a tragedy, but I can't make excuses, and I don't anymore. So please remember, make good choices, be careful, because this 1-second accident that happened to Luke can happen to any one of you. Today, I was telling Marcelo earlier that I was walking my dogs and I saw a little boy in a scooter with a little girl right in front of him, not wearing a helmet. And I stopped them. I said, hey, be careful, put on a helmet. Every single day, put on a helmet. And hopefully, I'm making a difference. And because if you're not sure, if you're not certain, go on to Luke's Facebook page, parents especially, and look how far Luke has come. But look what happened in the accident. The 5th one is to have faith. Now, my faith has been tested every single day. My faith has been tested every single day for the last 5 years. But without my faith, there is no way I could stand in front of those that I stand in front of. There is no way that I could talk in front of groups like you. I've had conversations in front of 1,000 students. I've talked to college teams. I've talked to professional athletes. I've talked to businesses. And I believe that all 5 of these things that I just mentioned applies to each of you at least 1 or 2 per day. But I would ask all of you also to make a copy of this and give it to a friend that you think could use one of these 5 things. Now, a couple of quick stories I want to mention to you that are incredible to me. Incredible. When I was having a hard time, I was driving around Lubbock, Texas. Now, Lubbock is the flattest city you've ever been around, okay? It is flat. It's not like Atlanta and other cities where you have some hills. But I'll tell you all, and I'm not sure how ashamed I am to mention this, but if Lubbock had some hills, I'm not sure if I would have driven off one of those hills. But I was driving around town aimlessly for 30 minutes. And I ended up at a grocery store 1 mile from the accident. And I always avoided that street. I always avoided that grocery store. I couldn't even look to that direction. But for some reason, I parked far away from everyone else at the grocery store. I didn't want to be seen. I just wanted to put my head down. And all of a sudden, I get a knock on my window that startled me. This person says to me, I'm praying for you, 1 foot in front of the other. And he walked away. I have no idea what his name is. I don't know how he found me. 1 foot in front of the other is what he told me. Well, all of you, after you get up from your couch or your car or wherever you are, you're going to take for granted that you're able to put 1 foot in front of the other. I hope and pray that one day Luke can put 1 foot in front of the other. And there are many days I feel paralyzed that I'm not able to put 1 foot in front of the other. That message, 1 foot in front of the other, is a cliche that you may have heard many times in your life, but it's not a cliche to me. It's now my motto. And most of the time, I finish a post on Facebook with put one foot in front of the other, not only to remind others, but to remind myself. The second quick story is I was at a basketball game with my daughter who plays high school basketball. And I was sitting next to Luke. And every single time I sat next to Luke in his wheelchair, I had someone come up to me and either acknowledge us, smile, ask to pray. I've never had one person walk right past us and not even acknowledge our presence. This woman walked right past us. 5 feet past us, she turned and said, "Hey, you were chosen for this." And then she walked away. She didn't tell me her name. She said nothing to me except, "You were chosen for this." And maybe I am chosen for this. You see, I spent 3 years playing professional tennis, and I played all the Grand Slams. I was fortunate enough to play Wimbledon and the US Open and the French Open and the Australian Open. I played against some great players, John McEnroe, Stefan Edberg, Yvonne Lendl. I practiced with Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi and Jim Courier and all these people. And then I coached tennis for 23 years. And maybe all my years of coaching and playing has gotten me to the point where I can handle that I am prepared for this. I'm no longer coaching Texas Tech. I don't coach professional tennis players anymore. I coach a different team. I coach Team Luke. I mentioned to you all earlier that Luke has inspired a lot of people. But I want all of you to know that Luke is also inspired by others. And we've been very fortunate to have had many famous people reach out to us. When Luke was in the hospital, I called the New Orleans Saints. I'm from New Orleans. I grew up in New Orleans. And Luke and I had a deal that we would never miss going to the Superdome in New Orleans every single year. And I know I'm speaking to a lot of people from Atlanta, which means a lot of Atlanta Falcons fans. So please, even though you love your Falcons, and I did choose to wear a shirt that's red and black for your Atlanta Falcons, hopefully today you'll have a little bit more of a soft spot for the Saints. Because when the Saints win, Luke is happy. Because what you're going to hear and what you saw already on the previous video is that Drew Brees reached out to us and sent us a video. And on that video, when I was in the intensive care with Luke, I played the video for Luke. And he said to us, "Hey, Luke, this is Drew Brees. I'm praying for you. And I can't wait to see you on the sidelines, cheering in the stands, saying hello to you, because one day I'm going to throw you a pass." Well, we missed the game that year. And in 2016, we went to see the Saints practice. Drew Brees comes running over to us. And he says, "Hey, Luke, I've heard all about you. And I'm going to throw you a ball one day, I promise you." The next year, you saw that pass that Drew Brees threw to his friend, who handed it to Luke. After practice, Drew Brees went up to Luke and said, "Luke, you've inspired me. But I want you to know, when we beat the Bears tomorrow, that game ball is going to be yours." And to my left, that game ball is sitting in our room. It says Luke Siegel, Saints 20, Bears 12. We have been to 8 Saints games since then, including 2 Saints heartbreaking losses. But what we have had more than those losses, we have met all the Saints players. We have been at practice. We have been on the field for every game. Last year, just before a game against your very Atlanta Falcons, who we lost to, by the way, but we're at that game, and I am looking around at practice, at the game, just before it starts, and I look around, and next thing I know, the linebacker for the Saints, number 56, Demario Davis, leans over Luke in his uniform and begins to pray over Luke. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He prayed over Luke 30 minutes before the game started. He walks away, and this gentleman next to me and says, "By the way, I'm a photographer for the New Orleans paper. I just caught that very scene." And that picture was on the front page of the New Orleans paper, Demario Davis praying over Luke. You see, so Luke has been inspired by famous athletes, but these famous athletes are also being inspired by Luke. Elvis Andrews is Luke's favorite player. Elvis visited Luke in the hospital. I made sure that Luke came to visit Luke, even though Elvis would visit Luke, even though Elvis visited another hospital the day before. Elvis has sent us videos. Elvis has sent us autographed. And guess what Elvis Andrews is going to be doing, hopefully, at the start of this baseball season, if we have a season? Elvis Andrews has agreed to give Team Luke Hope for Minds $100 for every hit he gets. That's around $20,000 for a full season. Elvis Andrews, the Texas Rangers, are going to invite us on the field when they present the check. Elvis Andrews is touched by Luke every day. I know most of you, if not all of you, know who the Super Bowl champions were this year. Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. Luke knew Patrick before Luke's accident. We used to go to practice, and Patrick would come up to Luke, and Luke was so engaged in practice because he watched how people practice. He cared about it. He wasn't goofing off. He watched everything, every second of every practice. The following year, we went to practice. Unfortunately, Luke was in a wheelchair with his eyes closed. Patrick Mahomes came up to Luke, and he told me he's going to pray for Luke every day, and that he would never play a football game for the rest of his career without wearing the Team Luke Hope for Minds bracelet. And when the season went on last year and he wore the cleats with Team Luke, we raised over $20,000 because of that. But if you watch the Super Bowl and when you go on the videos, you'll be able to see that Patrick Mahomes, when he held up that trophy, was wearing Team Luke Hope for Minds bracelet. So many athletes, so many tennis players: Novak Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, Sharapova, Chris Evert, Monica Seles, Jim Courier. I can go on and on. We had 160 videos sent to us on Luke's birthday a couple weeks ago. 25 of those were former or current pro tennis players. Andre Agassi came to do an event for us 2 years ago. Andy Roddick 3 years ago. The famous coach Nick Bollettieri 4 years ago. Last year, John Isner. This year, Sam Querrey. So we've had some, especially tennis players, that have meant so much to us. And I've seen a lot from these tennis players that when they see Luke, it does something to them. And I keep in touch with John Isner every week. John Isner tells me every single time I send him a video, he has to stop and think about what Luke is doing. It's inspired him. And I know it means a lot to me that Luke is inspiring so many others. It means the world to me. I also know that a lot of you love music. As I mentioned earlier, Luke loves music almost as much as he loves sports. And I would play Bruce Springsteen to Luke all the time. Even though he didn't want to hear it, he would hear it every single day. Well, you know what? Luke loved listening to Ed Sheeran. And before the accident, we would play Ed Sheeran. And he would like listening to slow songs by Ed Sheeran. And he said, "Dad, if you want to play Bruce Springsteen today, would you at least play a slow song?" I said, "Sure." Well, when the accident happened, I saw that Ed Sheeran was coming to Dallas, Texas. And I made darn sure that I went backstage. And I went backstage with Luke in his wheelchair. And I told Ed Sheeran how much his music means to Luke. And as the concert began, I noticed as he was playing the guitar, Ed Sheeran was wearing Luke's bracelet. So this goes beyond sports. It goes in the entertainment world. But more importantly, it affects those that simply care about life, that care about the highs and lows. I would imagine every family I'm talking to right now has been through some trauma, some tragedy, something that has brought you down. I'm far from the only one. But I also know that I have a calling now, a responsibility. I guess you could say it's my passion now to help others. I always loved coaching because I felt like I was helping not just their volleys. I talked about family every single day to those players. I talked about a lot more important things than just tennis. And now I guess I'm doing that. The very last story I want to share with you is that I was at Luke's school one day. He didn't know I was there. I parked far away and I watched PE. Luke used to tell me, Dad, we play football every day at PE. I can't wait for 3 o'clock. So one day I left practice early and I drove and I watched Luke. Now keep in mind, Luke is quiet. Luke is a little shy. Luke wanted to please. I didn't know what I was about to see. I watched Luke lead this practice in football. I watched Luke high-five kids that caught balls. I watched Luke high-five the other team when they scored a touchdown. I couldn't believe what I saw. And I told my wife that day, I said, you know what, Jenny? Luke is going to make a difference in the world. I saw something different today. Luke is going to make an impact on kids you can't imagine. Well, I guess you could say that Luke is doing that. It's not what I expected. It's not what I expected or what I wanted, but I do know that Luke is making an impact. And every single day that you all that are listening today, when you go onto your Instagram and you watch this video that you may take 2 seconds to accomplish, it may take Luke 45 minutes, but he never quits. And maybe when you watch that video, it will change your frame of mind. It will give you strength. And more importantly, it may change your attitude. What we're all going through today in the last 6, 8, 10 weeks, and maybe who knows how long, it's tough. Everyone's affected financially. Everyone's affected in some way. But maybe when you go to a video or when you look on your bracelet, maybe you'll realize, wait a minute, it's okay because I'm sharing my time with my family. And that's the one thing that's happened for us, is that Luke is around his family a lot more. Now, Luke continues to do therapy every single day, 3 hours every day. We hope that we're going to get back to that very soon. I want to ask any of you that's listening, whether it's any of you parents or children, if there's anything that you might have a question about, feel free to mention it and to ask me. But before I do, I want to let you all know that I wrote a book. And I'm no author. I'm certainly no author. But I wrote a book called It's in God's Hands. And the reason it's called It's in God's Hands is because day 8, when I mentioned to you that Luke had 3 surgeries, I asked the doctor, what do you think? He said, I don't know if Luke is brain dead, but I know it's in God's hands. Well, when I began the idea of writing a book, I went through some notes from the first month or so. And I remember reading maybe day 30 something. And I wrote, if I ever write a book, I'm going to call it It's in God's Hands. And so this book is on Amazon, but I've also given Marcelo a few copies. And I would ask all of you that if you're interested in reading our story, because this book is much more than just what we're going through. This book is about hope. It's about giving families hope. It's about giving families the ability to see past what just happened. I know every single day that when I walk outside and I go for a walk and I see little boys playing, when I see a father and a son playing catch, when I see a golf cart drive by, it hurts my stomach. The pain that I feel is in my stomach and sometimes goes up into my throat. But I also know that when I see a father and a son, or when I see a mother and children playing, it makes me happy because I know there's nothing more important than being around your family. So at this time, if anybody has any questions.
Coach, let me be the first one. First of all, just thank you so much for sharing all of that. Just such a powerful story. But out of your 5 things, the 5, inspirational things that you mentioned, you finished with have faith, right? And whatever that faith is, when something that is very tragic happens to us, I think it's very normal to become bitter and angry and just question, God. And how important has that been to you lately? And when did you feel like it was time for you to turn to that, to have more faith instead of just being locked into your room and just being angry at life?
Well, the anger part, I'm still trying to get a good grip on. I have 3 daughters. I have 3 grandsons. I have a beautiful wife, and I have my hero, my little boy, who's now 14. I woke up one day and I realized I can't change what happened. The family, yes, I'm upset, but I cannot change what happened. So what can I do to make a difference in a lot of other lives? July is Golf Cart Safety Awareness Month. And maybe just in Lubbock, Texas, I've helped save the lives of some children that would have hurt themselves. But my faith, although has been tested, I also know every single day something happens to me that makes me realize that God is there with me. In my book, Marcelo, I wrote a chapter. It's called God Things. And I mentioned some things that happened to me that I believe were God things. And one of those is day 14 of the accident. I had not listened to music one time. I could not listen to sad or happy songs. I couldn't do it. And one day I drove home to get some change of clothes. And I was pulling out of the driveway, heading back to the hospital, when suddenly I stopped the car. And I said, what's going on here? And someone told me, turn the radio on. I couldn't turn the radio on. And I stopped short, and I said, okay, I will turn the radio on. And I turned it on to Bruce Springsteen's channel, which I always did. And the song that came on was called, are you ready for this? It's a Miracle. It's a Miracle. Bruce Springsteen wrote a song, It's a Miracle. I'm paraphrasing it. Counting on a Miracle was the name of the song. Now, that's not one of Bruce Springsteen's most favorite, most popular songs, but Counting on a Miracle came on the radio. And I wrote a lot about that kind of thing that happened, Marcelo. I hear that all the time from different people. And so my faith will never go away. Do I get sad? Do I get emotional? Do I get so frustrated? Of course I do. Those are normal. But I also know that I'm helping a lot of others, and I will continue to help others, and that's what gets me through the day.
You know, we briefly talked before we started the session, and you kind of, as you're sharing the story, you mentioned some things, but what do you feel Luke has taught you over this past 5 years? You know, things that maybe you feel like you didn't know or you didn't have it in you before, and something that you feel like these kids and the families, you know, is very important for them to have, and no way for something tragic to happen in order to pursue it or try to learn about it.
You know, it's funny you asked that, because I'm going to share something that I haven't shared with anybody. May 16th is 2 weeks from tomorrow, and I'm going to let Marcelo know about all this. But we have something coming up called 30 Balls on the Wall, and what we're asking people is to videotape themselves hitting on the wall, 3 seconds, and you tag Team Luke Hope for Minds, and you donate $30. And we're going to reach out to the tennis world, the tennis community. It's a small, close-knit family, but we're going to ask everyone, and we're going to have a lot of famous professional tennis players do that. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I stayed away from tennis for a long time. I had not hit a tennis ball for years, because once again, tennis reminded me of the good times. And about a month ago, I decided enough is enough. And I went to a school and I started hitting balls against the wall. And I hit 303 balls against the wall. And I did that because Luke's lucky number is 3. And I started out by hitting 60 balls 5 times. And I could barely get to 60 because I was so out of shape. And then eventually I got to 100 balls 3 times. And today I did something I've never done before. I hit 303 balls in a row without missing, with 1 ball. And I kept telling myself, I'm not stopping because of Luke. Luke gave me the strength to keep going. I was exhausted. My legs were shot, but I kept going. And I kept saying to myself, if Luke can do what he does every day, I can do more. And I think the message is that we have a lot more in the tank. We have a lot more strength than we realize. Luke has given me strength I never knew I had, because of the strength that he has. And one thing I want to mention also, Marcelo, is that Team Luke Hope for Minds is now my life. It's what I do. We have support groups twice a week on the phone. I meet with families. We've had over $300,000 that we lost in March and April because of the events that were canceled. But I know that between our staff and people that I am reaching, that we're going to continue to help families, and we're going to be able to raise money. We raise money with different events. We had a tennis event upcoming in April that we had to cancel. We had a big event with Demario Davis that we had to cancel. We have event hopefully that we're going to be able to have later in the year. But these events that we do touch everyone because Luke is there in his wheelchair. When I speak to students all over the country, and I hope that I'm going to be able to come to UTA and bring Luke with me, and that everybody gets to see Luke and meet Luke and gets to see what Luke is doing, that will be more than just raising money for our nonprofit, but spreading awareness about our nonprofit. Because to me, that's every bit as important. Spreading awareness to what we do. It's not just about golf carts. It's about helping children who have suffered a brain injury, because there are so many of them.
Well, guys, everybody online, if you have any comments or questions or anything that, you want to maybe mention, like you can raise your hand or you can just unmute your mic.
I'll go. Marcelo.
Hey, Stu.
Hey, how are y'all?
Good, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, Tim. Amazing stuff. And I appreciate the opportunity for you to come and share your message with the group. I would never diminish as a father or a parent of multiple children. And although a lot can be made of all the famous people that are part of the team in Team Luke, and I would never diminish everything and the importance, because it's extremely admirable of what the message they're trying to say to the general public. Could you maybe talk about the relationship with his siblings and how important that also is? And maybe even share a funny story with the interaction with his siblings as being part of the team that gets you through every day. Because I think it resonates with me, and one can make a case that true heroes could be right in your own household for having to, as a support mechanism through this whole thing.
Well, that's a great question, and I'll be honest with you. I now have a 17-year-old daughter, Kate, a 15-year-old daughter, Ellie, who live with us, and then my 28-year-old daughter lives a mile away. But my 17 and 15-year-old daughters, they still struggle, because this didn't just affect Luke. Every single day that my Kate or my Ellie go to school, they're asked how Luke is doing. Every single day they come home and they want to talk to Luke, and they say hi to Luke, but they don't get a response anymore. And so they've had to adjust. They love Luke with all their heart. But one thing that happens a lot is they'll ask me questions. Dad, do you think Luke understands? Dad, do you think Luke knows who I am? And I know Luke understands. And I ask all of you to go onto the social media, because something happened a couple of days ago that I just posted. And parents, especially those of you that are on Facebook, I wrote this book, and I'm not sure how therapeutic the book really was for me. It was painful in a lot of ways. But what has now become therapeutic is on the Pray for Luke Siegel Facebook post. I post something about every 2 to 3 days, something that hit me, something that struck me. And this chair that I'm sitting in has become, I guess you could say, it's become my safe haven. It's become it's taken the place of throwing the ball with Luke. And I sit in this chair with Luke, and I hold him like a baby, and I talk to Luke, and I give him play-by-play of tennis or football or whatever. And I tell him about the NFL draft, or about the NFL schedule that's going to come out next week. But what I did a couple of days ago is I said, hey, Luke, do you know how much I love you? Can you do me a favor? Can you move your tongue? Can I hear your voice? Can I hear your voice? And all of a sudden, he started to try to make a sound. And you could tell he was trying so hard to speak, but sounds came out of his mouth. And I posted that, and to show what a fighter he is, but more importantly, to show that he understands. And I showed that to my daughters, and they certainly now know he understands. My daughters go through so much because they've had to make some sacrifices. We haven't had a family vacation in 5 years. We live in a smaller house. We live in a house that is basically geared for Luke. We are not able to do things that they were able to do earlier. But my daughters have learned a couple of key things. One, they've learned compassion. When they see someone in a wheelchair, when they see someone struggling, they have a different frame of mind about that. And number two, they've learned patience. Because when they say, hey, Dad, can we go now? It may take me 15 minutes to get Luke in the car in his wheelchair. And so I think those two things they've learned, and for that, it's been a blessing.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question.
No, I'm before Bert.
Go ahead.
Lady first.
No, go ahead, Bert.
No, I'm going to ask a real simple question. I want to get me a T-shirt and a bracelet. And how do I get that? That's question number one.
Give us your credit card number.
Okay, cool. I'll give it to you. And it's very interesting because the accident that Luke had, my first cousin's son had in the baseball cage with the coach, and the coach decided he was going to teach him how to hit. But he didn't give them the proper instructions to get behind the pitching machine. And the coach lucked up and hit one and hit him in the head. Then he's in emergency. They thought he was going to be brain dead. The same things that you went through, the anger and the whole ball of wax, it was uncertainty. He came out of it. He's doing well. He played college basketball. But the family, not only the immediate family, but everybody went through madness on it. But it brought people together, and it brought them closer to God. See, my prayer from now on is that Luke just gets better. And because Tim is there and the family's there, he's going to get better. It's just an inkling, and he can feel it. And I can feel it through the conversation. It's been a blessing to me to be on it. So,
well, Bert, I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I would just say a couple of things. Number one, the therapists are incredible, but also Luke is improving because he knows he's loved, and that's really special. And I have seen so many of these families who have suffered brain injuries, and when we know that we're all in this together, it makes a big difference. TeamLukeHopeForMinds.org is our website, and we do sell long sleeve shirts, short sleeve shirts, hats, T-shirts. And you know that I wear a Team Luke shirt, a different colored shirt, almost every day. And I do it because it helps me. And so whether it's a bracelet or a shirt or whatever it is, it definitely makes a difference for me because I need to remind myself to be positive because of what Luke is going through.
Sure. Wow, fabulous. I got it. Patricia.
Okay, can you hear me, Bert?
I have you loud and clear, along with 50
All right,
people.
well, Marcelo and everybody who's on this call, I've been more than privileged to be invited to participate and contribute to the Team Luke Hope for Minds events, probably last 2.5 or 3 years. And I do a lot of things in the tennis world, but nothing gives me more satisfaction, more inspiration than going to a Team Luke meeting or introducing friends like Bert and everybody else in my tennis world to Team Luke Hope for Minds. So for that, Tim and certainly Luke, thank you so very much for that.
Thank you, Patricia. And a lot of times when I'm on Facebook, people will ask me what they can pray for specifically for Luke. And I posted something last week, and it was a very tough picture to look at. It was Luke's spine. Luke's spine is 85 degrees curved now, and it is affecting his organs so much that his ribs are now where his stomach is. He has difficulty having bowel movements. April 7th, we were supposed to have spinal surgery. Because of the virus, we're not able to have surgery now until June or July. And every single day, I know if Luke is in pain. I can tell if Luke is hurting, but sometimes there's not a whole lot I can do other than give him love. So I would ask all of you to pray for Luke and his spine and comfort, and hope that this surgery, which is a very, very dangerous surgery with a tremendous amount of recovery, that he will do well after surgery. The other thing I would ask all of you is if you could spread awareness about whether it's if you see someone riding a bike, if you see someone on a skateboard, if you as parents could spread awareness to other friends of yours about our nonprofit, about the possibility of supporting our nonprofit, because what I don't ever want to do is tell a family no, that we can't help you. What we do differently than any other nonprofit for brain injuries, we are able to give families $5,000 to help them with equipment or counseling or support or you name it. We try to do so much with education. And every single day, as I mentioned, you cannot imagine the amount of people that go through these tragic situations. And we each give each other inspiration. We give each other hope. And for that, I'm eternally grateful.
Coach, let me ask you this. Like we have a bunch of parents and kids, and we know that only parents can truly understand at least some of the pain you go through. They can't understand 100% but that unconditional love that a parent has for their child, people like even me, not being a parent yet, and younger kids, it's hard for them to even wrap their minds around, what a human being is to go through in order to be able to overcome that. What message, especially, for the younger kids, when it comes to just pursuing their dreams on and off the court, what message do you have for them, just to kind of, wrap things up with them, to get them to understand what really matters in life?
Well, I think a lot of times I look at tennis as life. When you show up at the tennis court and you're just really not in the mood, you've got to turn yourself and say to yourself, I can get in the mood. I'm going to change my attitude. I'm going to change the way I approach tennis today. Well, that's how it is with life, whether I have to take a math test, whether I have to be at home. So that's one thing. Also, when I'm in a tennis match and things go well, life is wonderful. But what about when I'm not playing well and I'm down a set in a break, or I lost a heartbreaking match? How do I overcome that? Well, I tell you how you overcome it. You work harder. You get on that practice court and you do more. And in some ways, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to do more research on brain injuries. I'm trying to help Luke. After this call, I'm on the mat with Luke and we're stretching. We're then going to get on the stander for an hour. We're then going to take a walk. And then we have to give medicine and food. It is constant for me. But I also know for me, as a father, I would do anything for any of my children. Certainly, I would do anything for Luke. And Marcelo, what I would like to wrap up with is, if you don't mind sharing this song, I would like to finish up with this, everyone. I asked the pastor to write a song for us. This song is on YouTube, so you can share this at any time. The name of the song is called My Boy. In parentheses, it's Luke's song. It's a 5-minute song. I would love for you to watch this song, because in the video, you're going to be able to watch Luke do therapy. You're going to be able to watch Luke go through some tough times. And after the song is over, I will bring Luke into the room so you all can see Luke. Marcelo, go ahead.
Okay, Coach, I got it.
Your eyes tell the story about the boy you used to be. Running around my memory, you were home and young, free. You were my boy. An instant life forever changed. Oh, if I had only known. Thoughts of life fill my head, and You're still my boy. I'll be here for you. I've gotta put one foot in front of the other. I won't take no for an answer. I'll be strong, and before long, I'll let love kill the fear inside me. Let hope rise, keep on rising. I'll be strong, 'cause you're my soul. I found the answers to questions I didn't see. Never understand me. Trust is the hardest thing, but you're still my boy. Every day with you is a gift from the Lord. Seeing you fighting through, even tougher than before. Yeah, you're still my boy. I'll be here for you. I gotta put one foot in front of the other. I won't take no for an answer. I'll be strong, and before long, I'll let love kill fear inside me. Let hope rise, keep on rising. I'll be strong, 'cause you're my soul. I have a message that I talk to the kids about: finding their passion, never giving up, lean on friends, family, coaches, counselors, siblings. Make good choices, be careful, and have faith. Never lose hope. When you fall, don't you quit. We serve a God that's bigger than this. I always said, Luke, you're my boy, right? Always. That was my go-to thing, Luke, you're my boy. I'd be at a red light and I'd say, Luke, you're my boy. 1 mile later, you're my boy. And every time he'd say, sure, or he'd say, right, yeah. And then sometimes I would say it just to see if he'd give me a reaction I didn't like, and he never did. Always, you're my boy, right? My son, put one foot in front of the other, and don't take no for an answer. You're so strong, it won't be long. Feel that love kill fear inside you. Let hope rise, keep on rising. You're so strong, you are my soul. Just put one foot in front of the other, and don't take no chances. You're so strong, it won't be long. Kill fear inside you, let hope rise, keep on rising. You're so strong, you are my soul.
Marcelo, I just want to thank you and everyone that's listening that plays tennis with Marcelo. Do me a favor. Take advantage of the great coach that you have in Marcelo. You are blessed to be able to be on the tennis courts and be healthy, number one. Number two, you're also blessed to be able to play with such a great player who's had a tremendous amount of experience and as a coach. And now I want to show you the toughest little boy you ever met. This is Luke right here. We see Luke. Hey, buddy. He's wearing his New Orleans Saints shirt. He's got his Saints blanket. And everything here is New Orleans Saints. And I'll finish up right here with showing you the game ball. Thank all of you, and I look forward to coming to Atlanta and spending time with each of you. Marcelo, thank you so much.
Coach, thank you so much again. Just such a meaningful and impactful message. And it kind of just makes us think about all the cliche things that we say, but that are so true, how just love each other, just live life to the fullest. And tomorrow really isn't guaranteed. So we just got to make sure that we really enjoy everything that we got today. It is a privilege to be able to. So we just take for granted the ability to see, walk, talk, and we see Luke just fighting every day to be able to do those basic things.
That's right.
You said
well,
something that for us would
thank you.
2 seconds would take him 45 minutes to just knock over a bottle or just move a ball or something. Thank you so much for what you do, for your fight. It's definitely inspiring, and I hope to see you soon here with us.
Great. Take care, and don't forget, one foot in front of the other.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, brother.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.